First of all, he ain't had no business being in the ring with me. All right, this is not celebrity wrestling. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna let you get in there and get your jollies off because you've been watching me on tape all your life. Would I do it again? Yeah, I do it again. I'll stab the shit out of somebody else again if that shit happened to me again in the ring. Do I feel bad about stabbing him? No. Should he have died? Yeah. I'm glad he didn't, but it is what it is. That's what happened. I take my job very serious.
African Americans in professional wrestling have gone down as some of the most important key figures of all time. The Big Cat Ernie Ladd, Thunderbolt Patterson, Slick, The Rock, the Junkyard Dog. Some of the biggest stars, biggest names ever were from the African American community. And the month of February every year is dedicated to Black History Month. But today, this time on Hibiki Honors, we're honoring possibly the greatest African American pro wrestler of all time. Today we honor New Jack.
Motherfuckers, it's for so long you could sleep. I'm like Freddy in your dreams, appearing live up on your street. They key, ha ha ha. But it's so long they could play. Try to hold a nigga down, but every dog he has his day. Killing a con, tuck him face down. You don't really want to step in my playground.
Now let's get it out of the way. There is a lot of controversy surrounding New Jack. There's a lot of things that have been said about the man, be it good or bad. But there's one thing you cannot deny or take away from the man, and that is New Jack, the character, isn't a character or a gimmick. After being a bounty hunter throughout the late 80s and early 90s, Jerome Young was desperately searching for a legit way to make a living. Having enough of life on the streets and crime, he was ready to be official, legit, like I said, and ready to do it the right way. Well, at least the right way for New Jack. And he was trained in 1992 by pro wrestler Ray Candy, making his debut in the USWA of all places. After tooling around in the USWA and the North Georgia Wrestling Alliance between 92 and 94, finally New Jack caught the eye of promoter of Smoky Mountain Wrestling at the time, the legendary Jim Cornette. By this time, New Jack had caught up with former WCW jobber Mustafa Saeed and formed one of the most notorious tag teams of all time, the Gangstas. And the Gangstas in the Smoky Mountain Wrestling area, they were tailor-made for white, hot, flaming heat. The Gangstas were so believable and good at their gimmick, it's not really a gimmick, that in 1995, the NAACP actually picketed outside of the arena in Knoxville after a Smoky Mountain Wrestling show. That's how offensive the Gangstas came off, especially in that area. Feuding with teams like the Rock and Roll Express and PG-13, fans hated them, and they were probably, most definitely, the top heels that territory ever saw. But then the sky was the limit, and they didn't stop there when Paul Heyman came a-calling. It's well documented that throughout the late to mid 90s, no promotion had a bigger cult-like buzz around it than ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling. And if ever an act was tailor-made for ECW, it was the Gangstas. And man, did they take the ball and run with it. Initially feuding with teams like Public Enemy, the Eliminators, going on to feud with teams like the Dudleys. So much violence, so much mayhem, so much New Jack in ECW. He was literally one of the staples and backbones in that company. I remember ordering a pay-per-view, an ECW show in '98, and the concept, the injury angle that New Jack might not be on the card was so disappointing to me. That's how important he was as an act for that company. Unfortunately, all that positive momentum for New Jack came to a halt at an ECW house show, where a man named Eric Hulas, who was only 17 at the time, lied about his age backstage in order to get booked on the show as a pro wrestler, having no previous pro wrestling experience. The massively overweight kid was just brutally attacked flat out. There's no easy way to put it. New Jack beat the living hell out of this kid to the point that he bladed him so deep it left permanent scarring. The video footage of this is a little disturbing, so apologies if it's too much, but it's just a little taste, it's a little blueprint of what made New Jack New Jack. Now, with his final days in ECW for the next 4 to 5 years, I'd love to tell you that he split from the Gangstas, became a singles act, won titles, eventually springboarded that into contracts with WCW, WWE. But quite frankly, even for the Attitude Era, New Jack was so controversial, like the incident with mass transit, that nobody else wanted to touch him with a 50-foot pole except Outlaw Indie Promotions. Fast forward to more modern times, controversy never left the side of New Jack, trust me. The infamous matchup against Gypsy Joe, a man 30 plus New Jack's age, that was beaten so bad in the match that the crowd straight up turned on New Jack. While I'm not advocating it, racial slurs from the crowd and all that, it was hard to say who was right or wrong in that situation. It was just an ugly mess. An ugly mess pretty much sums up the career of one of the most notorious, dangerous, and quite frankly, best at their gimmicks there ever was. The man, the myth, the motherfucking legend. This is New Jack.
I am known as one of the most hardcore and it's, violent, whatever, diving off stuff ever in the history of this sport business. And then you got this 97-year-old dude that was around when gas was 12 cents a gallon and Jesus and Moses were tag teaming. Give me my